All right, so today I'm going to work through how to solve our quadratics through the practice problem. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at um, practicing more with this method. So first thing says isolate your x term. So that means move your -4 over and add a square to hold that spot. So I'm going to add 4 to both sides. I'm going to get x squared minus 14x plus a square equals 4 plus a square. Okay? So that's the first step. Now what we're going to do is we're going to find b, take half of it, and then square it. So remember, b is the number in front of x, which is, I'm going to put it down here. b is -14. So if I take half of it, I get -7. Now this is the number that's going to go in our parentheses when we factor it. And then my next step is square it, and I get 49. Now that squared number goes in the square. So that's the next step. You're going to put 49 in the square. And just remember that -7 is going to be important. So the next thing is we're going to clean it up. So we get x squared minus 14x plus 49 equals 4 plus 49 is 53. Okay? Now what we just made is a perfect square trinomial over here on the left, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to factor it. So when we factor something like that, we find the two numbers that multiply to 49 that give us a -14. Those factors are -7 and -7. So you do your grouping, bada, bada, ba, and you should get x minus 7. Now, the reason why I'm not doing all the work is because it takes up too much space. And I know this -7 is the number in my factors because that's what we're purposely making it look like. All right, so now that I factored it, I bring my 53 down. I'm going to now write it as a perfect square. So that just means write x minus 7 squared equals 53. Okay, now my next step is take square root of both sides. So I'm going to square root it, and I get x minus 7. And then this comes down as a plus or minus radical 53. Okay? Now the next thing says to solve for x, so that just means I'm going to add 7. I need to get x by itself. I'm going to add 7 to both sides. So you get x equals 7 plus or minus radical 53. So those are my answers. Now the problem here is, I'm going to erase this because I need some room, is that it told me up in the directions to round to the nearest hundredth. So what that means is I have to take my calculator out. Got to separate my two answers. X equals 7 plus radical 53 and x equals 7 minus radical 53. So what I need to do now is I need to take my calculator and I'm going to plug in 7 plus radical 53. Press enter and round it to the nearest hundredth would be 14.28. So that's going to be my first answer, 14.28. And then I'm going to put it back in. I'm going to put my calculator up. I'm going to do 7 minus second x squared, 53. And you're going to get -0.28. So that's going to be my second answer, -0.28. So those are your two answers rounded to the nearest hundredth. And these are considered in radical form. So you have two possible answers, but the ones they want here now are just rounded to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so pause the video, make sure you get this down. Now let's go on to the next one. So the next one tells us, yikes, where's that happen? The next one tells us we're going to solve this. So it says isolate the x term. So that means I need to get my 24 over. So I'm going to do that by adding 24 to both sides. So I'm going to bring down my x squared, my -12x. I'm going to put plus a square to hold its spot. And that comes down 0 plus 24 is 24 plus a square. And now step 2 says find b, take half of it and square it. So b is -12. -12 halved is -6. Now again, that's our magic number for our factors. -6 squared is 36. So that's the number going in our square. the squared number, 36, 36. Now we're going to clean it up. So I get x squared minus 12x plus 36 equals 24 plus 36 is 60. Okay. Now we just made a perfect square trinomial on the left and we're going to factor it. So if you want to pause the video and factor it, that's fine using your trinomial grouping method. But just remember the shortcut is just going to be x minus 6, x minus 6. Why do I know that? Because we purposely made it like that. This is the number over here, that negative 6 going in both of our factors. Bring down your 60. Okay, so this becomes a perfect square, so I rewrite it as x minus 6 squared equals 60. Step 5 says take the square root of both sides, so I'm going to square root here. The square root allows me to take out that x minus 6, so drop everything off of that side, and then this just becomes plus or minus radical 60. Okay, now I'm going to solve for x. I'm going to add 6 to both sides. Now again, that 6 goes in front. I get x equals 6 plus or minus radical 60. Now in the future, sometimes you might have to put it in simplest radical form. We'll go over that. But today what we're going to do is we're going to round it to the nearest hundredth. So I have x equals 6 plus radical 60 and x equals 6 minus radical 60. So I'm going to plug that in my calculator. 6 plus radical 60. Enter, I get 13.74596669. So rounding it is going to be 13.75. So this becomes 13.75. And now I'm going to plug in the subtraction one, 6 minus radical 60. And I get negative 0.74596669. And so I'm going to round it. It's negative 1.75. Okay, so those are your two answers for this one. Again, they're both, one's an exact answer. The other one, the decimal, is an approximation. All right, so pause the video, make sure you get these steps down, then we'll move on to number 3.